Francesca Lamargia. I'm the founder and director of Mother Tongues, and the person who first thought that doing a festival like this would be a good idea. I have to thank a lot of people in this room for believing in this project and being here tonight as well. So I officially welcome you all to the 6th edition of the Mother Tongues Festival. Every year we work behind the scenes for what seems like a 4-day festival, a 3-day festival, but there's a lot of conversations that happen, there's a lot of collaborations, and a lot of very important steps that we make to bring multilingualism in front of the eyes of people who may not have thought about it before. So we have an artistic mission, but we also have a social mission, and we want to make languages and all the languages that people speak in their homes more visible, and more visible also from an auditory point of view. So this is a moment for all of us to gather and reflect on what it means to be on an island where more than 100 languages are spoken. And they're spoken by small babies, they're spoken by adults, and it's a multilingual island where multilingualism is written in the Constitution as well. The theme of this year's festival is building community through creative multilingualism. So myself and Aoife Concannon, who's here, have spoken a lot about the right wording. And Aoife was really insisting on the word building, because there's a lot of work we need to do to actually raise awareness of multilingualism, raise awareness of why we do the work that we do. And there's a lot of building that we need to continue doing. There's a lot of conversations we need to have. There's a lot of change we still want to see that we haven't seen happening yet. And also we wanted to have the word community in it, because only when we come together we can actually share who we are and what we have in common, but also the differences that there are between ourselves. And obviously creative multilingualism, you'll hear all about it over the next few hours, and also in the coming days. So do have a look at our festival program. Well, our team: Elena Cristofanon, Aoife Concannon, Celine Bogmargarter, Soraya Sobrevilla, Tatiana Santos, and Nora Luagi. Ta-da! And also, I want to say that we're very grateful to our funders, the Arts Council and South Dublin County Council, because without their support, this would have been a dream, but it wouldn't have been a reality. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it's up to us, and I'm very honored to sit here surrounded by fabulous minds and artists and non-artists. I'm not an artist, so just putting it out there, you have to teach me. I am Anca Minescu. I will start by saying that. I am a lecturer in psychology at the University of Limerick. I'm originally Romanian. I lived in the Netherlands, and I've been in Ireland for the last 12 years. And I speak a few languages myself, but the one I would really like to speak to my kids is Romanian. But that's also the language that they are not very proud of and not very happy to speak in public. So when I learned about mother tongues and when I learned about the festival, I thought, oh, yes, a collective, collaborative, I think it's relatively nationwide initiative that can actually make my kids one day proud that they come from a family, a set plan, but we do have the plan of letting everybody introduce themselves, because the idea is that a lot of the things that we do because of who we are, right? So then, if you introduce yourself, you're kind of also giving an insight into why you do the things you do and how you do the things you do. And it is my great pleasure to be surrounded by Owen, by Hala, by Anna, and Nisha. And I will pass on the microphone to Hala, who actually told me to introduce myself in Romanian. And I forgot. I didn't have my notes either. Okay, so bună seara, mă bucur că sunt aici. Okay, good evening, bună seara. I'm happy to be here. Hala?
مرحبا، أنا اسمي هلا. أنا موسيقية وأنا من فلسطين. So hi, good afternoon. My name is Hala. I am a community musician and a researcher in the area of community music and best practices when working with migrant communities, especially refugees and asylum seekers who came to Ireland in the context of post-conflict. okay for now?
That's okay for now, yes. Owen?
Orisha, I'm in Monacarey, a moniker Ondi Bardoon. My name is Ondi Bardoon. I am a traveller. I work as the Curator and National Collection Officer for the National Museum of Ireland. I'm a writer and a creator, and I'm very involved in a revival around our stories, our lore, as well as practical expressions of who we are, including, very importantly, our language.
Thank you, Owen. And you're also really funny, which is why you're here. So I'm sure that will be the next thing. Anna?
Tran on the Jessica of Anna ní Gallagher in Time Tharmsa, agus is as Ilan Aaron Morg on the Unangalme. My name is Anna ní Gallagher, and I'm originally from Aaronmore Island in County Donegal. And I have been living in the Dublin area for the last 28 years. I lived in France for 6 years before that. And I'm a retired associate professor from Maynooth University, where I was in charge of the language centre, where we taught 11 languages for many years, and then I became head of the Centre for Irish Language Research, Teaching and Testing, and head of the School of Celtic Studies. I retired 2 years ago, and since 2012, I was the chair of the board of Údarás na Gaeltachta, which is the state agency responsible for the economic, social, cultural and linguistic development of the Gaeltacht. And I finished my second 2-year term there on the 15th of January of this year. And on the 26th, I think it was, of November, I was appointed chair of TG Cahir, the television station. And I also sit on the board of the board of trustees of the Association of Language Testers in Europe, ALTI.
She's a busy woman, this one, so yeah.
So I've sat on committees to do with languages and multilingualism in Ireland and in Europe for the last 30 or so years at different times.
And you are the native here.
I am the native.
Between you and Owen, and between the most native of the natives in Ireland, right?
Yeah. And I'm sorry that
and they speak different languages, them two native people here. Yes, so we'll come back to that later. All the way from Belfast, Nisha.
शुभ दोपहर, मेरा नाम निशा टंडन है और मैं आर्ट सेक्टर जो कि एक आर्ट्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हमारे दूसरे मुल्कों के लोगों को आने के लिए यहाँ पे वेलकम करती हूँ। तो उसका मैं 40 साल से उसका उद्घाटन किया और उसको चला रही हूँ. So in English, I mean I could speak 4 more languages, but in English, my name is Nisha Tandon, and first of all, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nisha Tandon, and I run an arts organization which helps the minority ethnic people coming in our beautiful island to give them their personal development and develop them in their culture and arts and languages skill. Recently, we have been working quite a lot with the refugee and asylum seekers, and this has been 40 years of living in Northern Ireland, a very divided country, and we sort of try to bring everybody together, and the slogan of Art Sector is cultural bonding through arts, and that's what we do. And we run lots of festivals and bring everybody, give them their place, which is very important. And in my organization, we speak about 42 different languages, and every language gets its room and space to grow and, just a sense of belonging. And that is very, very important, and that's what we do.
Wow. So as you can see, people around this table are working with different groups as well, and they are representing different maybe types of activities, arts and languages. But I suppose what everybody really has in common is that all of this work is, like Francesca was saying, is collaborative, because you cannot work with communities without collaborating with the communities. And I think there is also, and I think in this room, in a way, I'm talking to the converted, right? That when you talk about collaboration, the true meaning of collaboration is also co-creation. Because otherwise it's just colonialism, and we don't want to mention that C word anywhere, because it comes with a lot of problems. So rather than coming and imposing something from the top or from a disciplinary perspective or from some sort of a place of expertise, I think all people are working with trying to see, first of all, who's living in Ireland, how are they represented in the policies, in the school curricula. We were talking to Anna about her work with basically language policy in general. What can you do at a Living Cert, for example, things like this. So maybe my next question is, how do you work with the communities? Is it easy? Is it hard? Because the idea of co-creation sometimes is really nice and kind of almost sexy. Can I say that on camera? Yeah. But yeah, because it's nice. You bring people together and there's a nice vibe. It's like coming to a party, but you might not get what you want out of it, or you might not come on the same page, or people might start dropping out, or you might not get the same buyout, or you bring some people together, but by bringing them people together, you're creating further divisions, right? So because you're bringing only the Muslims today and the Palestinians tomorrow, and okay, that is actually a different thing I learned because there are Palestinian people who are not Muslim here in the room. Yeah. So my question to the panel now is, how do you work with the communities? How do you engage in this kind of maybe co-creation? And again with Hala, not because I want to go in this, but I just start with Hala because Hala is a community musician, and that is something that in Romania I never heard of, but in the University of Limerick we're really proud of, and you're one of those people we're very proud of. Right. So,
just before I answer that really hard question, do you guys know what a community musician is? No. Yeah.
See, I'm not the only one, so you better explain. Yeah.
So, you all know what music education is?
Yes.
No. When you get in a music teacher and they go, you have to learn this. This is the way. This is to sing, and no, you don't sound nice, so you don't sing. You've got that experience. So there's another side of making music that I am 100% you all experienced it in the pub in Ireland when you're all just sitting down and a session goes on and you're singing and with them. When you're singing in your that's also community musician. So community music there are different types of it, but it's basically the music of the community. So I do have a degree in music education, but my work as a music community musician is I work with the people to create music that's what they like at this moment. What we want to represent. We can do songwriting, we can share music from our cultures, we can play instruments if someone plays an instrument, but there is a social emphasis in music making rather than, we need to learn this curriculum and we need to have a product and an excellent performance. We can perform and the performance can be excellent, but the focus of the work, there's more a sense of a social approach. So that's basically the nuts and shells of a community musician. And we work in different contexts. My work with refugees and how do we do what we do is a very big question. And it's...
You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay. It's not an easy thing to answer because every community you work with have a different need and a different way. You need to be flexible enough to work with them. And just in terms of languages, well, I speak multiple languages as well, so that helped me. I speak English, French, and Arabic, and Irish Sign Language, which tends to be forgotten sometimes. So that helped me a lot communicate. However, in my work, I focus on the music we're making. And I try, if I'm working with people who don't speak Arabic, then I'll bring an Arab song and start there. So everybody can start with a language that they've never spoken before, so no one has an advantage. And then, or if no one can go bring a French song, or and then start from a plain level field, and then shift the focus on it being on the music making, on the fun, on sharing that create instead of focusing on what we can understand with each other in the language. And it's very funny. I find language funny for a couple of reasons because there's so many layers in the language. I met a Syrian family, for example, who've created their own language by adding a letter every other letter. And it's only them, they understand it. And I'm like, what's going on there? Where, as an Arab, I would use words, but as a Syrian who speaks also Arabic, they don't use that word, or they use it in a different way, where I had someone come and say, Hala, don't say that again. And I'm like, why? It's like, it does not mean what you think it means. In Syria, we use it differently. And I'm like, okay. So it is a difficult, so you have to be very flexible and aware and open the dialogue between you and your participants, where they come to you and say, you're using our language wrong. And as well, the body language is very, very important, because even if they're not talking to you, their body is talking to you. They sit and cross, because that's kind of they're protecting themselves.
The Irish traveller culture, right, where a lot of everything happens in the circle, right? It happens around tradition, right? And I suppose, this kind of storytelling, singing, sharing in the community is something that is in the genes, right? I mean, it's so part of the culture, right? I mean, I could go so far and crazy to say that's human history, all in all, right? But I wonder how now when you work in a museum. I mean, yeah.
I think that when we are all storytellers, I think we forget that we're storytellers. And you're probably a very proficient storyteller, you don't realise this. Have you ever come down on a Saturday morning and said, listen, do you know what happened last night? You are naturally a storyteller. Talk about museums, but museums in one way or another is the state is telling a story or a narrative of its history and what it wants to give prominence to, and what it wants to have a sense of value, what it wants to ignore, what it wants to say, kind of these are things that we're interested in. So places like museums are telling us stories, and they are communicating. Actually, part of my own work was actually working on the national collection of our travellers. So you think about that, like we've always been here, we've always been a part of this island, the history of this island. Our understanding of the origins of the Irish people are slightly different than the established. We believe that nomadism is a very natural aspect of human reality, that no one can own land, that we're people who are just naturally transient. So when we look at the idea of our history and how we tell our histories and who tells our histories, a part of that work within the museum is that when I'm recording, I'm allowing people to select the language they want to do, and the objects coming in, it's not myself who decides how it's classified, there's the technical measurements, but actually what people give about that item, that object, that history they're recording is by their own choice and including their own language, which actually was a bit of a difficulty at times, because what we're doing is that we're putting into an official record a language and a recording that we don't even have an agreed script of, into a national institution, which is like going, what are they saying? Do you know? Which brings up an anxiety of people, and actually where that anxiety comes from is the need and the history of controlling it, rather than going, this is someone who's just sharing an aspect of the story. If they are cursing you left, right and centre and blue, that's fine too, because clearly it's communication. But I do think that tapping deeper into how we communicate, why we communicate, and the language of our own people, because I think what's slightly different for many people, and most minority groups, and sometimes even majorities, have experienced is, including the Irish people, with the oppression of Irish and Gaelic on the island itself, is our language went through its own journey, that it came from a very open flourish language that has been used in a very crypto form, which means we say it's secret and it's private and it's an internal practice, which isn't always entirely true. So a lot of my work is taking the silenced or the whispers and trying to allow people the confidence to have space. I am one of the main, as a range of a group called Tom Tarry, which is a travel Macari kind of specific.
I don't know whether you know much about it as well. So Shiva is Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer, and that's the death, so that's it. So that's the end. And Maeve is just basically a beautiful birth, rebirth. So that was the connection. And there is places here in Ireland, in County Kildare and Wexford and further down, where they have the prominence of these two cultures. Shiva meets Maeve. And I did a beautiful booklet and also the whole research on it. NVTV, our local television, Merlin Heinemann sadly passed away in COVID, and she did all that research for us, and we did a fantastic exhibition, and then that became a touring exhibition. In those days, we had Peace 1 money, Peace 2 money, and Peace 3 money, and peace and reconciliation work could have been done no other way than bringing language in between and bringing them interculturally peace process. And it was absolutely brilliant way of bringing not only just the two cultures together, but also giving the importance of our past history, plus the use of the language, which is also diminished in India. Not many people now converse in my childhood, I was made to learn Sanskrit. It was compulsory for me to learn Sanskrit, but not anymore. It is you have choices, whether you want to go and learn. Sometimes they don't even learn their mother tongue, which is Hindi, and that is also now the prominent language in India. But I feel that Irish here is also not spoken everywhere, which should be that it should be the language which is spoken first, and then it comes the layers come after, because that is our mother tongue. But let's not go there. We cannot change the policies and the procedures and the upcoming young people. We just cannot. But I just feel that these are the type of projects which should be brought alive again, and also given the importance that how interculturalism just doesn't work with India and Ireland, how interculturalism has worked with a beautiful Iranian people who are coming to this island, and the language they speak is Farsi. And once they start to speak Farsi, I'm arguing with them, and I says, no, this is Hindi. You're stealing my language. No, this is our word. I say no, and then Arabic. If you look at the Arabic language, it is so similar to some of the Hindi language words, Irish language. So similar, and so it is really, really, so in my organization, I don't say that you have to speak in English. There are people who speak Hindi, like me, and Punjabi, and I have other who will speak those two languages, and sometimes we go in our tangent, and we have an Irish speaking girl who goes into Irish speaking, and then we have Ulster Scots, and she starts to speak in Ulster Scots, and the mishmash, everything is just so beautiful. And especially on Tuesdays and on Thursdays, when we have all our refugee and asylum ladies coming, and then men coming on Thursdays to do their English class, is just so beautiful to see that the shared space being created, and there is no language barrier. You just speak in your own language. Whether I understand what they're saying or not doesn't matter. It's the facial expression, their hand movements, their eye sort of moving here and there. And that is more than enough for us to sort of, And then when I come to my grandchildren, I taught my own language to my children. And like your daughter, what you were saying, they were not very proud speak Hindi language in school environment or anything like that. But now I'm they are so proud that they want to learn Hindi language and go and speak Hindi language within their own school environment. And they might be the only Hindi speakers in their whole classroom, but they are not shy. But that is and my generation was different. Children's generation was different, and now grandchildren's now I know that this is something very new to them. They feel very excited by speaking Hindi as a language on Saturdays when they are in my house or in their school, but they will grow out of it. don't hear, when their school kids will start to tease them or something like that, then they will probably not want to. But I think we need to keep our cultures alive, and to keep the cultures alive, it is very important of languages, and give everybody the opportunity to say whichever.
And I think
and not abuse the language.
Exactly. Yeah. So
not abusive language.
You're touching on the right thing, because again, we tend to equate many things. So language with culture, culture with country, country with maybe sometimes continent, because Africans. I mean, what do you mean, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that this is where, again, creative arts and multiculturalism as an idea is much more powerful than maybe just saying nationalities. Well, we have so many nationalities, therefore we have to speak so many languages. Well, yeah, but actually you could be from Romania and you could be a Hungarian Catholic guy, right? Because we have a big Hungarian, I mean, if I was a true Romanian, I wouldn't really say that, because they have their own country to go to, and Transylvania is ours. You know where Dracula comes from? Dracula is Romanian, not Hungarian. Never mind.
Written by an Irishman.
Written by an Irishman. Written by an Irishman. Very good clarification. Okay. So again, I think those are the important things. And when you are working in a host country, right, and when you are working with multiple minority groups, as well as indigenous and native groups, right, I think that you can get rid of all this citizenship criteria, and you have a chance of a no judgment zone where you can just speak the language, right? Or you can just think in your own language and create in non-verbal kind of ways, right? And what I also like about what you just said is that, communication, and you kind of all touched about that, and actually all of you, even you also touched about that, yeah, about the fact that, sometimes you don't even have to understand.
Yeah.
Because you're just there, and you just know, or what you said, Francesca, the parents just relax, that they don't have to try to speak the perfect English, or they don't have to try to pretend, right? And in language, we would call that a safe space, and safe spaces are absolutely crucial. Things, first of all, for just general mental health. Safe spaces are even more crucial for people who have experienced trauma of any sort, of any kind. Safe spaces are really needed for learning to happen. Yeah, you don't learn. Imagine a kid trying to do the homework while the parents are fighting. Yeah, good luck with the homework. That's not a safe space. That's not where you can actually concentrate and be the best you can be. So I think that this fascinates me, about how, there are norms in society. There's a predominant language, for example, or a predominant culture, and how hard we then have to try to create these other safe spaces where we can promote the other languages or the other cultures. And I think there's no better person to speak about this. Because the Geltacht, right? I mean, the whole revival, bring back the growth of the Irish language, the original Irish language of this land after colonialism. It's a battle almost that it's only still at the beginning. At least if you look about history, it's thousands of years. What's 100 years? So what is your feeling about that? Are people starting to celebrate, to have these safe spaces, or how can policies, schools create those safe spaces where the Irish language is the language that at least the people who speak it and who come from places like yourself, who are a native speaker, don't have to justify themselves, or don't have to.
I a few things there. The first thing I would say, just in relation to languages generally, I think if we were asked to sort of define our position on languages a little bit, and mine would be, we have an expression in the Irish language, ag toriad gael, and gael means a relative or a connection, and toriad gael means looking for the connection, and something that Irish people indulge in a lot, especially if you're from a country area, where I remember in the country you're from, I'm not going to say in case she's recognised or could be recognised, that people actually don't like to be asked where they're from. And I kind of thought about it, I thought, well, he's put me in my box there. And then I thought about it and I thought, no, in Ireland, we always ask people where they're from. And it's not because we think that it's an insult or because we were being rude. It's because we're looking for the connection with them. And people used to say to me, oh, Irish people are very nosy, they're very cute. And, you know, they wanted to know where I was from and who I was married to and blah, blah, blah. And it's not about being nosy. It's looking to see who we have. And I know certainly, you know, as somebody who's lived abroad, if there are English people present, sometimes when you meet another Irish person, this has happened to me on more than one occasion, where the English person will say, 5 minutes to find somebody you know in common. Ireland, and we always do, and because it's like, where did you go to college? Okay, oh, did you know? And then you find. So for me, language is about that. It's about looking for the connection with the other person. And Nisha talked about the connection between Irish and Sanskrit. So Irish is an Indo-European language. Sanskrit is also the oldest written form of an Indo-European language. So there is a connection there. In Europe, the closest language to Sanskrit is Lithuanian, which is called a conservative language because it has preserved many of the qualities of Sanskrit. And Irish is actually the oldest written language in Europe, which is still spoken as a vernacular everyday language. So that's something that a lot of people don't know, which people still speak as a native language. And when Owen was talking about secret languages and so on, I think we have a very narrow view of what languages are, in that, you know, a language is this, is that, should do this, should do that, should be this, should do that. Whereas languages have many, many different functions. And, you know, a secret is one of them. A lingua franca, which the English language has become, which the Spanish language is another one. But because your language doesn't do everything that you think, for instance, the English does not mean it's less valuable as a language or less important as a language. And I think that that's something, sometimes we're very hard on ourselves, because you say, okay, I wouldn't be able to discuss rocket science in Irish. Even though the terminology is probably there somewhere. I couldn't discuss rocket science in English either, in fact. But me neither. But it's you know, I know from talking to colleagues, for instance, from Egypt. I remember talking to a colleague from Cambridge who's Egyptian, and so is her husband, and he's a doctor. And I said, oh, and he trained in Egypt, and did he have difficulty acquiring the terminology when he came to England? And she said, no, because the only medical faculties in Egypt teach through the medium of English. So actually he'd learned all his medicine in English. So and sometimes then we think, oh, in Irish I don't know the word for, you know, appendicitis, or I don't know the word for something. That's totally a natural phenomenon. You know, Irish is minority language, and minoritized language, I think, is a term that I prefer, because you know, languages sometimes disappear accidentally, but more often it's a result, as a very act on the part of a government, a state, an ethnic group, or whatever. And in today's world, it's, you know, English as a lingua franca is a huge thing, but we have issues in Ireland. We also have issues in Irish to do with the learning of foreign languages, in that increasingly they're finding it difficult to recruit Irish candidates who are proficient in several languages, even though the Irish language is now, since 2007, recognised as a fully working and official language of the European Union. So when I was young, for instance, if I had wanted to be a translator, I couldn't have included the Irish language in my portfolio of languages. That's now possible. So we're actually going to be relying on many of our new Irish to represent us, to be our representatives in the European Commission, where 2 or 3 or 4 languages are necessary in order to get a foothold, to get a foot in the door, and then you can move between departments and so on. Because we're not able to provide the people at the moment. And I don't want to speak for too long. I came to live in 1994. Time when I was in town, I used to really appreciate hearing another language. I was in town yesterday and I hardly heard any English, and I consider that a mark of great progress.
Oh wow, fabulous! I have that experience in Brussels all the time. I don't know where I am, especially if you go by around the European Parliament. And this reminded me that I think it was only a few years ago that the highest points in the Living Cert in the Irish language were won by an Afro-Irish kid, right? Which I think is so beautiful.
I don't know if the highest points, but
something like that. I think it's a few years ago. Maybe even 5 years ago.
Yeah, because if people are bilingual, it's much easier to learn a third or fourth language.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's easier.
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to all the kind of brain. The brain is very interconnected, and the more languages you speak, the more connections there are there. So there is a lot of evidence that multilingualism creates more cognitive flexibility. But that is actually not even in just in learning other languages. They discovered that people who speak more languages are actually more artistically creative, right? So they would combine, they say, okay, color this house, and then they color half the house, one color half, and they do things. By the way, these are actual studies. I don't make this up, but you can think whatever you like, but I can follow up. I just wonder, I know, and I'm very conscious that all of you came here to also create and co-create and participate, and Mother Tongues here has created that plan for the workshop and for more discussions to be around the tables. But I really want to give one more chance to all the panelists. Maybe give us a take-home message. Okay, and look, you have many choices here, so you can make a take-home message about what you even like most about multilingualism. That's one way to take this take-home message. Another one is what you like most in working and being creative in general, whether you're creative through the arts or whether you're creative in other ways. And another aspect, maybe just going back to Francesca's point, is about are there take-home messages from all your experiences of working for so many years with different communities, into how, what is it that brings people together really? And also because I hear sometimes, you don't even know what they're talking about, because it's still fun to be together. Is it just that you have to make people have fun? Is that what brings people together? And I don't know, because it's puzzling, on the one hand we say, it's good to learn and speak multiple languages. On the other hand, we say language, so never mind that, right? So, many ways to, and Anna, I really appreciate your comment about, maybe we just have to really expand this understanding of what language is and give more credibility to the things that are just not written, but very much active, And
I would just say that, be mindful of stereotyping, that I am Indian, so it doesn't mean that I have come from a very sort of poor background and I didn't speak English in my own country, or I can't speak any other language, or cannot be integrated into the community. So I think that is and what we wear doesn't make any difference, so we are all the same people and same, So I think just stereotyping is very, let's be mindful of it. And I think we can make this place a very happy place because we're not that bad, We do welcome everybody, but there are these stereotyping things which go onto our heads and minds, and I think that's something which we need to step back from and make this island the most beautiful island. I think that's what will be my dream come true.
Not just the green island, the emerald island, the multicolor.
Multicolor,
yeah. Okay,
I'm
thank you.
Green that maybe will come in between us.
Anyone else? Yeah. Take home? Come on, Owen,
no.
give us something. Give us something. Take home.
I think when we speak, because we had a brief chat beforehand, and one of the things that came up a lot in our conversations, and we're threaded through it, was the sense of people who were either newer or kind of historically establishing themselves in the island, their families, and the sense of the idea of like associated shame or embarrassment of languages, and how that can be very complicated. But I'm a little bit more hopeful. I think that anything that is loved survives.
Oh,
You know,
let me write that down. So hold
but
on.
we've seen it itself, like within the Gaelic, it was like going, my father, he's in his 70s, and his father and his mother were Irish speakers.
I have a bunch of scribbles, really, because it's not, it's not art, but it is an art intervention,
But can I say that, I don't know if because English is my second language, and when I'm tired, I can't speak English.
True.
Do you know, I just
also,
like,
when I'm hungry, I swear,
Yeah.
in many other
you
languages.
switch to your language because like your brain is so tired to think in a different language. Like, can I speak Arabic now?
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to say the sentence in Arabic and then translate it
Yes.
to English. It's like, okay, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, take home messages on this side of the table?
Yeah, well, I mean, language is about communication essentially, and for me, communication is about finding the commonality, if you like, of experience between yourself and the other person, the people you're talking to, and it's about, looking at our common human experience and how we view that. And I suppose what I love about different languages is the kind of little additional sort of richness that it brings to your life as well. And also that it opens up a new world to you, because I suppose one of the things that I regret that has been happening over the last number of years is the increase in power of English, for instance, as a lingua franca. And so the Erasmus programme that some of you might be aware of is an exchange programme between citizens of the European Union, mainly students. That started in the 1980s. And we're now at the stage where when, for instance, English-speaking students such as Irish students go to France or Germany or Poland or anywhere, they end up speaking English when they go abroad, instead of actually immersing themselves in the full experience of living in a country like Poland or like France or like Spain. And one of my daughters went on her Erasmus year to Clermont-Ferrand, and I mean, she would have been exposed to French quite a lot. And I remember saying, and are you speaking French all the time? And she said, well, no, because if a German comes up to you and says something to you in perfect English, it's very difficult to respond in sort of ropey French, which I can understand. And then you find universities on the continent of Europe are offering courses for Erasmus students through the medium of English. That started in Sweden, and it's spread even down as far as Spain now at this stage. So if you're an English speaker, it's very difficult to learn another language, and you have to be very stubborn and very determined. And the same daughter lived in Berlin for 4 years, and we went to visit her at one stage. And she said it's impossible to learn German. She was doing 15 hours of German a week, and people were still answering her in English in the shops. And I said, well, by God, they're not going to answer me in English. And so you go into a cafe and they'd say, English, Deutsch. I said, Deutsch, bitte. And then you discover you're speaking to an Australian in German after about 3 minutes, the person serving the table. So I mean, I think we have to be understanding of English speakers as well, and that even those who try very hard, they have to try even harder than speakers learning other languages. So I suppose that's something that we're all aware of, but it's still not an excuse. It just means it makes our job a little bit harder.
Well, with people like you there, we won't have a chance.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So I'm concluding. Fight the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Don't go by the stereotypes. What love survives. Oh, I love that one. Yeah. If you love it, it will survive, right? So I think that's really important to think about what is it that we love so much about our languages and about our cultures, that we really cherish and love so much that we cannot let it go, right? And just trust that will work that way. identifying and creating shared experiences. I think it's incredibly powerful, and again, sometimes is with and beyond languages, and I think that's incredible. And this last point about how the richness and the new mind, literally new brains and new worlds that a new language brings to you, comes very close to me, because I was teaching about emotions and things like this, and you know, in English you say I am sad, and apparently in the Irish language you say sadness is upon me somehow. So that actually psychologically is a much better way to deal with emotions, because emotions are there to come and go. So they are upon you right now, but they'll be upon him next. So they are not really there to identify. Okay, not the sadness, but all the other stuff, right? Yeah. But so again, you know, when you speak another language, you really learn to think and feel differently as well. And whichever language you choose to swear in or love in, that's fine as well. But at least you have more choices, right? And I think that this
everyday words. We have the word ishke, which is water, an effect in some way on our language, and we all have an effect and I suppose some kind of an impact on the other languages that surround us. So it's all about communication. It's all about connection. And that Irish people, I did. I'm sorry, I don't mean to take the floor, but I did a piece of research in 2005, 2006, when sort of migration to Ireland was really just in its early stages, and I came up at the time with, it was on the number of languages spoken in Ireland, and I came up with 167, and it was taken up by the Irish Times and by the media and everything at the time, and the overwhelming response to it was positive. 99.999% of people were delighted that so many languages were spoken in Ireland. And I was getting calls from artists who were doing pieces of art and who wanted to know what the 10 most popular were and all kinds of other things. And then I forgot about the Greeks, and I got a call from the Greek embassy to say, why did you leave the Greeks out? And it was just an error, and so on. But I think because of studying Irish at school, and that the experience is not always a positive one for everybody, but at least people are aware of the existence of other languages and other ways of being and other ways of expressing yourselves, so that you shouldn't forget that. And it's very important to keep up the language with your children. Very, very, very important.
And on that point, actually, this is what we're going to talk about. And I would like to first, probably after we just shake up a bit and so on, it's workshops at each table. We're going to discuss about multiculturalism in the community. What are the challenges, but never mind the challenges, what are the solutions? So each table will have a scribe, somebody to keep notes. So please think about that. So how do we promote multilingualism in societies? Okay, what are the blocks, and then how to overcome those blocks? So I'll pass it on to Aoife maybe to describe more. Is it? Thank you.